Homeless boy discovers a secret in his mother's book. The truth changes everything. The city sparkled with Christmas lights, glowing in reds, greens, and golds. Storefronts were covered in fake snow, and carolers stood on the sidewalks, singing about joy and warmth. Families rushed past, their arms full of wrapped presents, their faces red from the cold but glowing with happiness. The scent of cinnamon and roasted nuts filled the air, mixing with the laughter of children. But for Lucas, the world looked different. He sat on a frozen bench, pulling his thin coat tighter around his small frame. His fingers were numb, his breath forming little clouds in the air. People walked past him as if he were invisible. He had been living on the streets for 2 years, ever since his mother disappeared. She had tucked him into bed one night, whispered, "I love you, Lucas. No matter what happens, never forget that." And then by morning, she was gone. Lucas never found out why. He had searched everywhere. He had waited for her at the old apartment, hoping she'd come back. But days turned into weeks, then months. Eventually, the landlord kicked him out, and he learned how to survive on his own. Now at 12 years old, he knew every shortcut in the city. He knew which restaurants threw away food at night, which alleyways were safest to sleep in, and which people to avoid. But none of that mattered tonight. Tonight, he was starving. Lucas reached into his pocket and pulled out half of a sandwich he had found earlier. The bread was dry, the cheese stiff from the cold, but to him it was a feast. He stared at it for a long moment, then tore off a small piece and placed it in his mouth. As he chewed, a soft whimper caught his attention. He turned his head and saw a tiny puppy hiding behind a trash can. It was shaking, its thin body covered in patches of matted fur. Its ribs showed through its skin, and its eyes, large and dark, were locked onto the sandwich in his hands. Lucas frowned. A puppy? In this cold? The little dog took a step forward, its nose twitching. Lucas hesitated. He barely had enough food for himself. He could walk away, pretend he never saw it. But something in the puppy's eyes stopped him, because he had seen that same look before. It was the look of someone who had lost everything. Slowly, Lucas ripped off another piece of his sandwich. He held it out, his fingers shaking from the cold. The puppy sniffed the air, then crept forward, step by step, until it was close enough to take the food. It snatched the bread, swallowed it in one bite, then wagged its tail for the first time. Lucas felt something strange in his chest, a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. "You're really hungry, huh?" he muttered. The puppy gave a tiny bark, as if answering. Lucas sighed. He looked down at his sandwich, then back at the puppy. Finally, he ripped off another piece. "Here," he whispered, tossing it to the little creature. As the puppy gobbled up the food, Lucas realized something. He wasn't alone anymore. Lucas sat against a brick wall, the puppy curled up beside him, its tiny body pressing against his leg for warmth. He had never had a pet before. He had never had anyone to take care of except himself. For the first time in 2 years, he didn't feel completely invisible. But just as his eyes began to close, footsteps crunched against the icy sidewalk. Lucas tensed. He had learned to be careful. Not everyone in the city was kind. Some people liked picking on kids like him. He gripped his bag and glanced up, expecting to see another stranger who would pass by without a second glance. Instead, he saw an old man standing a few feet away. The man had a long gray coat, a thick scarf wrapped around his neck, and kind but tired eyes. He was staring at Lucas, not with pity, but with something else, something harder to name. Lucas's muscles tightened. Why was this man looking at him? Then to his surprise, the man crouched down and pulled something from his pocket, a small round object. "Take it," the man said, holding it out. Lucas hesitated. He didn't trust strangers. He had learned that the hard way. But when he saw what the man was holding, his heart skipped a beat. It was a fresh, warm bread roll. Lucas's stomach growled. His pride told him to refuse, to act like he didn't need it. But his hunger won. He reached out and took the bread. "Thanks," he muttered. The man nodded. Then before Lucas could ask any questions, he stood up and walked away, disappearing into the night. Lucas sat there holding the warm bread, his mind racing with questions. Who was that man? Why had he helped him? And why? Did his voice sound familiar? As the city fell asleep, Lucas sat against the wall, the puppy curled into his side. He thought about his mother. He thought about the old man. He thought about the strange feeling in his chest, the feeling that something was about to change. The puppy yawned and snuggled closer to him. Lucas smiled. "Guess I need to give you a name, huh?" he whispered. The puppy looked up at him, its tail thumping against the ground. Lucas thought for a moment, then he chuckled. "Ember," he said, "because you're the only warm thing in my life right now." Ember barked happily, as if she liked the name. Lucas sighed, leaning his head back against the wall. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He didn't know if he'd ever see that strange old man again. But for now, with Ember beside him, he didn't feel quite as alone. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough.
Lucas awoke to the distant sound of car horns and the crunching of footsteps on icy sidewalks. His breath came out in white puffs as he pulled his coat tighter around himself. The city was waking up, but for him, the streets had never slept. Beside him, Ember stirred, letting out a soft whimper as she stretched her tiny legs. She blinked up at him with sleepy brown eyes before nuzzling into his side. Lucas smiled. At least one of us slept well. His stomach growled, reminding him that the last thing he had eaten was the half sandwich from yesterday. He still had the bread roll from the mysterious old man, but it was smaller than his fist. Not nearly enough to last him and Ember the whole day. He sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. Today, they had to find food. Lucas had a few places he knew he could check. Sometimes bakery workers left extra bread in the alley behind the store. Other times, restaurant owners gave away leftovers if they were in a generous mood. But the city was ruthless. He had spent enough time on the streets to know that nothing came easy. Ember trotted beside him, her tail wagging despite the cold. Lucas envied her optimism. "All right, let's see what we can find," he muttered, adjusting his worn-out backpack. They started their search. The first alleyway behind the bakery? Empty. The small soup kitchen he sometimes visited? Already closed. The kind woman who sometimes left out food near the train station? Nowhere to be seen. Lucas felt his stomach twist. It was going to be one of those days. Just as he was about to give up, the scent of grilled meat filled the air. His head snapped toward a small food cart at the corner of the street. Hot dogs. His mouth watered at the sight of a fresh one being placed on a napkin. The vendor, a large man with a thick beard, handed it to a smiling customer. Lucas took a deep breath. Maybe if I ask, maybe if I'm polite. But he already knew how these things went. People didn't like being reminded of kids like him. Kids who had nothing. Instead, he waited. He stood near the sidewalk, watching as the man served one customer after another. He wasn't the only one waiting. Another boy, a few years older, was also lurking nearby. Lucas recognized him from the streets. His name was Jace, and he wasn't friendly. Jace caught Lucas staring and smirked. "You're wasting your time, kid. This guy never gives handouts." Lucas ignored him. Minutes passed. Then, finally, an opportunity. A businessman in a rush grabbed his hot dog, but as he turned, his wallet slipped out of his pocket. Lucas's eyes widened. He knew what he was supposed to do. He could take it. He could grab the wallet and disappear into the crowd. It would be enough for him and Ember to eat for weeks. His fingers twitched. His stomach ached. But before he could make a choice, Ember barked. The businessman turned, noticing his wallet on the ground. He picked it up and looked around. His gaze landed on Lucas. Lucas froze, expecting the worst. Instead, the man smiled. "Good dog," he said, nodding at Ember. "She must have seen my wallet fall. Smart little thing." Lucas opened his mouth, ready to correct him. But then, "Here," the man said, handing Lucas a $5 bill. Lucas blinked in shock. "What?" "For being honest," the man said simply before walking away. Jace scoffed. "You should have just taken the wallet." Lucas ignored him. He looked down at Ember, who wagged her tail proudly, then at the money in his hand. It wasn't much, but it was enough. He hurried to the food cart and bought 2 hot dogs, one for himself, one for Ember. For the first time in days, they ate until they were full. With his stomach no longer aching, Lucas felt like he could finally think clearly. His mind drifted back to the old man from last night. There was something about him, something familiar. Lucas had seen plenty of strangers in the city, but none had ever stopped to help him. None had ever spoken to him in a way that felt personal. Who was he? And why did his voice remind Lucas of something from long ago? There was only one way to find out. Lucas retraced his steps from the night before, Ember trotting beside him. He searched for any sign of the old man, but came up empty. Then he remembered something. The bookstore. He had seen a small bookstore in the distance when the man had handed him the bread. Lucas found it easily. It was a tiny shop squeezed between two larger buildings, with an old wooden sign above the door, Mr. Whitmore's bookshop. Lucas hesitated. He didn't belong in places like this. Shops meant rules, and rules meant people watching him closely, making sure he didn't steal. But something pushed him forward. The little bell above the door jingled as he stepped inside. Warm air wrapped around him instantly, and the scent of books filled his nose. An older man stood behind the counter, flipping through a large book. He looked up when he saw Lucas, and then he smiled. "I was wondering if you'd come," he said. Lucas froze. He knew. The man closed his book and walked over. "Did you enjoy the bread?" Lucas swallowed. His instincts screamed at him to run. This was weird. Too weird. But before he could move, Ember walked up to the man and sniffed his shoes. Then, to Lucas's complete shock, she wagged her tail. She trusted him. Lucas wasn't sure why, but so did he. The man gestured toward a chair. "Sit. I have something for you." Lucas hesitated, but curiosity won. He sat down, his heart pounding. The man reached behind the counter and pulled out an old, worn book. Its cover was faded, but when Lucas saw the title, his breath caught. Because he knew this book. He had seen it before. Years ago, when his mother read it to him at night, his hands trembled as he reached for it. "How do you have this?" he whispered. The man studied him carefully. "Because I knew your mother." Lucas's world tilted. His fingers tightened around the book. His heartbeat roared in his ears. "No," he whispered. "That's not possible." But deep down, he knew the truth. This man, Mr. Whitmore, was the first real link to his mother he had found in 2 years. And suddenly, everything about his past felt like a puzzle that was about to be put together. Lucas sat frozen, gripping the book as if it might disappear. His heart pounded against his ribs, each beat heavier than the last. "I knew your mother," the old man, Mr. Whitmore, had said. The words echoed in his mind, twisting through every memory he had of her. Her warm smile, the way she used to ruffle his hair, the bedtime stories she read to him when the world was still whole. And then she was gone. 2 years of silence, 2 years of questions without answers. Until now. Lucas swallowed hard. His throat felt dry, like he had swallowed a handful of dust. "You're lying," he finally said. His voice was barely above a whisper. Mr. Whitmore didn't look offended. If anything, he seemed sad. "I wish I were," he said softly, "but I have no reason to lie to you, Lucas." Hearing his name made Lucas flinch. He hadn't told him his name. "How do you know me?" he asked, gripping the book tighter. "How do you know who I am?" Mr. Whitmore sighed and gestured toward a chair. "Sit," he said. "Let me tell you a story." Lucas hesitated, his instincts screaming at him to run. But Ember, sitting at his feet, looked calm. She wasn't growling, wasn't nervous. She trusted this man. Lucas wasn't sure why, but that made him stay. Slowly, he lowered himself into the chair. His stomach was a tangled knot. He wasn't sure he was ready for what he was about to hear. Mr. Whitmore sat across from Lucas, folding his hands on the wooden table between them. His eyes, full of something unreadable, studied the boy before he spoke. "Your mother's name was Evelyn Carter," he began. "She was a writer. Not just any writer, one of the most brilliant I've ever known." Lucas blinked. His mother was a writer? Sure, she had told him bedtime stories, but he never knew she wrote books. "She had a gift," Mr. Whitmore continued. "She could weave magic with words. She wrote stories about lost children finding their way home, about hope when everything seemed dark." Lucas's fingers tightened around the book in his lap. He knew this book. His mother had read it to him when he was younger, and she had written it. His voice felt small when he finally spoke. "Then why did she leave me?" Mr. Whitmore exhaled slowly. "She didn't leave you, Lucas." He met the boy's gaze. "She was taken." Lucas felt his breath hitch. "Taken?" "No," he muttered. "That doesn't make sense. People don't just get taken." Mr. Whitmore's expression darkened. "Some do." Lucas shook his head. "Who? Who took her?" The old man hesitated. He glanced around the shop as if making sure no one was listening. Then, in a hushed voice, he said, "A group of people who wanted something from her, something she refused to give." Lucas's heart pounded. "What?" he demanded. "What did they want?" Mr. Whitmore tapped the book in Lucas's hands. Something hidden inside these pages. Lucas's mind reeled. A book? His mother's book? What could possibly be inside that was so important? He flipped through the worn pages, searching for what? A clue? A secret message? But before he could ask another question, the shop door creaked open. Lucas stiffened. A man walked in, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a long dark coat. His eyes swept the shop slowly before settling on them. Mr. Whitmore tensed. Lucas didn't need to be told. Something was wrong. The man walked toward them, his boots clicking against the wooden floor. He stopped a few feet away, his gaze flicking between Mr. Whitmore and Lucas. "Good evening," the man said. His voice was smooth, but there was something cold beneath it. "I was wondering if you could help me find a certain book." Mr. Whitmore leaned back in his chair, his face unreadable. "We have plenty of books," he said. "Which one are you looking for?" The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Something by Evelyn Carter." Lucas's blood turned to ice. He was looking for his mother's book. Mr. Whitmore remained calm. "I'm afraid we don't have any copies left." The man tilted his head slightly. "That's a shame," he said. His gaze flicked to Lucas. "Because I heard a rumor that one might have just surfaced." Lucas clenched his jaw. His hands tightened around the book. The man knew. Somehow, he knew Lucas had it. A sick feeling curled in his stomach. If this man was looking for his mother's book, then maybe he was connected to whatever had happened to her. Ember growled beside him, her small body tensed. Mr. Whitmore's voice was steady when he spoke. "I think you should leave." The man smiled again, but this time there was no warmth at all. "I'll be back," he said, his gaze lingering on Lucas. "And when I return, I hope you'll reconsider." Then, without another word, he turned and walked out. Lucas barely breathed until the door shut behind him. Then he turned to Mr. Whitmore, his heart hammering in his chest. "What just happened?" The old man rubbed his temples. "That, my boy, was someone who does not want you finding the truth." Lucas swallowed hard, but he had already made up his mind. Whatever was happening, whatever danger this book carried, he was going to figure it out. Because if it meant finding out what had happened to his mother, then nothing, not the cold, not hunger, not even dangerous men, was going to stop him. Lucas sat on the floor of the bookstore that night, Ember curled up beside him. He flipped through his mother's book, searching for anything unusual, and then on the very last page, he found it. A message, written so faintly it could barely be seen under normal light. Lucas held the page up to the small lamp beside him, squinting. 4 words stood out, written in delicate cursive handwriting. "Find me, trust Whitmore." His breath caught. His mother had left him a clue. She was alive. She was out there, waiting for him to find her. Lucas's hands trembled, but his eyes burned with determination. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He had a mission. And no one, not even the men who had taken her, were going to stop him. Lucas sat frozen, staring at the words written on the last page of his mother's book. "Find me, trust Whitmore." His fingers traced the faded ink. His heart pounded. This was real. After 2 years of silence, 2 years of thinking she was gone forever, his mother had left him a message. But where was she? And why did she trust Mr. Whitmore? He looked up at the old man, who sat across from him with a deep frown. The flickering lamp cast long shadows across the bookstore walls, making everything feel heavier, more serious. Ember lay curled at Lucas's feet, her small body rising and falling with each sleepy breath. Lucas swallowed hard. "What does this mean?" Mr. Whitmore sighed. "It means she knew something bad was coming, and she wanted you to find her." Lucas tightened his grip on the book. "Then why didn't she just take me with her?" His voice cracked, frustration and sadness tangled together. The old man leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "Because she was protecting you." Lucas clenched his jaw. It was always the same answer. "She left to protect me. She disappeared to keep me safe." But safe didn't feel like this. Safe wasn't starving on the streets. Safe wasn't sleeping in alleyways. Safe wasn't being hunted by strangers who wanted something from a book. Lucas took a shaky breath, trying to push away the anger bubbling inside him. He wanted to yell. He wanted to demand answers, but he didn't have time for emotions right now. Not when the man in the dark coat had promised to come back. Not when he finally had a lead. Lucas sat up straighter. "We have to go, now." Mr. Whitmore raised an eyebrow. And where exactly do you plan on going? Lucas pointed at the book. She left me a clue. That means she's out there, somewhere. I can't just sit here and wait for... The shop door rattled. Both of them froze. The street outside was quiet, but the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps sent a chill down Lucas's spine. "They're back," he whispered. Mr. Whitmore stood quickly and reached for something behind the counter. A baseball bat. Not much, but better than nothing. Lucas's breath came fast. He glanced at the back door. "Is there another way out?" The old man nodded. "Storeroom. Leads to the alley." Lucas didn't waste another second. He grabbed the book, scooped up Ember, and dashed toward the back. Mr. Whitmore followed, locking the storeroom door behind them. The air in the alley was freezing, but Lucas didn't care. They had to keep moving. They ran for 3 blocks before stopping near an old bus station. Lucas's breath came in sharp gasps, his pulse still hammering in his ears. Mr. Whitmore leaned against a lamppost, gripping his knees. "All right, kid," he panted. "What's the plan?" Lucas flipped through the book again, fingers shaking. He didn't know what he was looking for. More writing? A hidden note? Then his eyes landed on something strange. A page that looked too thick. His pulse jumped. Holding his breath, he peeled the page apart and gasped. Inside the hollowed-out space was a folded piece of paper. He unfolded it quickly. His mother's handwriting covered the page, rushed but clear. "Elle, if you're reading this, it means you're in danger. Go to the place where stories never end. Find the red door. Trust no one else. I love you." Lucas's mind raced. The place where stories never end. "What does that mean?" he muttered. Mr. Whitmore's face darkened. "The city's old library," he said. Lucas's breath caught. He knew that place. He and his mom had gone there all the time. She had taken him to the children's section, let him pick out books, even made up their own little game of hiding secret notes inside the pages. The old library had closed a year ago, but if she left this message, maybe she had hidden something there. Lucas stuffed the note back into the book and nodded. "We have to go, now." Mr. Whitmore hesitated. "Lucas, listen, these people, whoever they are, they won't just stop if we run. They want something, and if your mother went through this much trouble to keep you safe, it means whatever she hid is dangerous." Lucas met his eyes. "I don't care." His voice was firm. "She's my mom." Mr. Whitmore studied him for a long moment, then he sighed. "All right, but we'll have to be careful." They set off toward the old library, weaving through back streets to avoid being seen. Lucas's heart pounded harder with every step. The wind howled through the empty streets, and Ember stayed close to Lucas's heels, her ears twitching at every sound. They weren't alone. Somewhere behind them, footsteps echoed. Lucas didn't look back. The old library was abandoned, its windows dark and broken. A rusted chain covered the front doors, but the side entrance was loose enough for Lucas to slip through. Mr. Whitmore followed, glancing around warily. "We don't have much time." Lucas nodded. His mother's message was clear. Find the red door. The library was silent inside, dust covering the floor like a thin layer of snow. The bookshelves still stood, their spines faded but untouched. Lucas swallowed hard. He had so many memories here. "Focus," he told himself. He moved quickly, searching through the halls. And then, there, a door at the far end of the room, painted red. Lucas's pulse jumped. This is it. Mr. Whitmore approached cautiously. "Be careful." Lucas turned the knob. It was unlocked. His stomach twisted as he stepped inside. The room was small, with nothing but old bookshelves and a wooden desk. But something was wrong. The dust on the floor had footprints. Someone had been here recently. And then, before Lucas could react, the door slammed shut behind them. The sound of a lock clicking echoed through the room. Lucas spun, his heart in his throat. Through the small window on the door, he saw the man in the dark coat, smirking. "You shouldn't have come here, kid," the man said, voice muffled through the glass. "But since you did, let's have a little chat." Lucas's blood ran cold. They were trapped. Lucas's mind raced. They had found the red door. They had found his mother's message. But now, they were caught. And whatever was hidden in this room, it was important enough for someone to make sure they never left with it. Ember let out a low growl, standing protectively in front of Lucas. Mr. Whitmore's jaw clenched. "Lucas," he whispered, "we need to get out of here." Lucas swallowed hard, because deep down, he knew. this was just the beginning. Lucas's pulse pounded in his ears as the sound of the lock clicking shut echoed through the small library room. He spun toward the door. Through the grimy window, the man in the dark coat stood on the other side, watching them with a smirk. "You shouldn't have come here, kid," the man said. His voice was low, calm, like he had all the time in the world. Lucas's hands curled into fists. "Who are you?" The man ignored the question. Instead, he reached into his coat and held up something small and silver. A key. "You want to leave?" His smirk widened. "Give me the book." Lucas tightened his grip on the old, worn novel. His mother's book, the one she had left behind with a hidden note that led him here. He wasn't stupid. This wasn't just about a book. It was about whatever secret his mother had left inside. And if this man wanted it, that meant Lucas had to keep it. He took a deep breath. "No." The man sighed, shaking his head like a disappointed teacher. "I was hoping you'd make this easy." Lucas's heart slammed against his ribs as the man reached into his pocket again, this time pulling out something else. A phone. "I'd hate to involve the police," the man said smoothly. "It'd be a shame if they thought a couple of trespassers were breaking into city property." Lucas's stomach dropped. If the cops came, they wouldn't listen to a homeless kid and an old bookstore owner. They'd take the book. They'd take him. He couldn't let that happen. Mr. Whitmore stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "What do you want with the book?" The man tilted his head. "It's not about the book." His gaze flicked to Lucas. "It's about what his mother left behind." Lucas felt his blood run cold. "She's gone," he snapped. "You took her." The man laughed. "Oh, kid," he said. "You really don't know, do you?" Lucas froze, his heart pounded, his breath came faster. "What do you mean?" he demanded. "Where is she?" The man's smirk didn't fade. "Tell you what," he said, twirling the key between his fingers. "Hand over the book and I'll tell you everything." Lucas's mind raced. This book, the last thing his mother left him, was important. Maybe it held the key to finding her. Maybe it was the only thing keeping him from the truth. His fingers tightened around the worn pages, and then he made a decision. Lucas whipped around and scanned the room. There had to be another way out. There, a tiny window near the ceiling. It was small, but he could fit through. Lucas acted fast. He shoved the book into his backpack and turned to Mr. Whitmore. "The window," he whispered. "I'll go first. Help Ember up." The old man followed his gaze, then nodded. But before they could move, the man pounded on the door. "Time's running out, kid," he called. Lucas ignored him. He rushed to the desk in the corner and dragged it under the window. The legs scraped against the dusty floor. The man outside heard it. "Don't be stupid, Lucas." His voice turned sharp. "You can't run forever." Lucas climbed onto the desk, then turned to Ember. "Come on, girl." Mr. Whitmore lifted the little dog and Lucas pulled her up, pushing her through the small window. She landed outside with a soft thud, then barked excitedly. Lucas's heart hammered. His turn. He scrambled up, gripping the sides of the window frame. And just as he started to pull himself through, BAM! The door slammed open. The man had kicked it down. Lucas threw himself through the window, his back scraping against the frame. His hands hit the pavement hard as he landed outside. Pain shot through his palms, but he ignored it. "Run!" he shouted to Mr. Whitmore. Ember barked wildly as Lucas grabbed her and sprinted. Behind them, the man shoved through the broken door, his coat billowing. "Get back here!" he shouted. Lucas didn't listen. He just ran. They didn't stop running until they reached the abandoned train yard on the edge of the city. Lucas collapsed onto the ground, chest heaving. Ember curled up beside him, her little body warm against his side. Mr. Whitmore, still breathing hard, wiped sweat from his forehead. "Well," he panted, "that could have gone better." Lucas pulled off his backpack and yanked out the book. He flipped to the hidden note. His mother had written, "Go to the place where stories never end. Find the red door. Trust no one else." Lucas's mind raced. They had found the red door, they had found the book, but there had to be something else. His mother wouldn't have sent him there just to get caught. His fingers trembled as he ran them over the inside of the back cover. Something was off. The fabric lining felt loose. His breath caught. There was something hidden inside. Carefully, he peeled back the fabric. Inside was a tiny USB drive. Lucas's hands shook as he held it up. Mr. Whitmore's eyes widened. What's on it? Lucas's heart pounded. He had no idea. But whatever it was the reason his mother had vanished. Mr. Whitmore took out his phone and pulled up a map. There's an internet cafe a few blocks from here, he said. We can check what's on the drive. Lucas swallowed hard, his pulse roaring in his ears. This was it. This was the final clue. He slipped the USB into his pocket, grabbed his bag, and looked down at Ember. Let's go, he said. The little dog wagged her tail. She had no idea what was coming. And neither did Lucas, because whatever was on that USB, it was something people were willing to kill for. And once he opened it, there would be no turning back. Lucas clutched the tiny USB drive in his fist as he, Mr. Whitmore, and Ember moved swiftly through the empty streets. His mind raced, trying to piece together everything that had happened. His mother had left him this one clue. People were chasing him for it. And whatever was on this drive, it was big enough to make her disappear. He swallowed hard. The wind howled through the alleys as they hurried toward an internet cafe on the edge of town. The place was dimly lit, half empty. A bored cashier barely looked up as they entered. Lucas's hands were shaking as he slid into a corner booth and turned on the old flickering computer. Are you sure about this? Mr. Whitmore asked. Lucas plugged in the USB. I need to know. The screen blinked to life. A single file appeared. Lucas's breath caught. His chest tightened. His mother had left this for him. With one last glance at Mr. Whitmore, he clicked it open. A video appeared. The screen flickered, then came to life. Lucas's heart stopped, because staring back at him was his mother. She looked tired. Her hair was pulled into a messy ponytail. Shadows clung beneath her eyes, but her expression was the same. Warm, loving, familiar. Lucas's hands curled into fists as the video began to play. Her voice was soft but urgent. Lucas, if you're watching this, it means I couldn't come back for you. His breath hitched. I wanted to, I tried, but there are people, dangerous people, who didn't want me to tell the truth. Lucas felt a lump rise in his throat. I was working on a story, something bigger than anything I had written before. I found out things I wasn't supposed to, people in power doing terrible things. Her voice trembled. They tried to stop me, Lucas, and when I refused to stay quiet, they took me. Lucas gritted his teeth. He had been right. She hadn't abandoned him. She had been stolen away. His mother took a deep breath, eyes dark. I don't have much time, sweetheart, but listen to me carefully. This USB, it has everything. All the files, all the evidence. If it gets into the right hands, it can take these people down. Lucas's fingers tightened around the keyboard. I left it for you because I trust you, Lucas. I trust you to be brave. I trust you to do what's right. Her lips quivered. And most of all, I trust you to survive. Lucas's vision blurred with tears. His mother took one last breath, then just before the video ended, she whispered, I love you. The screen went dark. Lucas sat there unable to move. His chest felt too tight, his hands too numb. She was gone, but she had left him the truth, and now he had to decide what to do with it. Before he could even think, the cafe door slammed open. Lucas's head snapped up. Two men in dark coats stepped inside, his stomach twisted. Mr. Whitmore whispered, Lucas, we need to move. But it was too late. One of the men locked eyes with him, his lips curled into a smile. Lucas's blood ran cold. They weren't going to let him leave. They were going to take the drive. And then they were going to make sure he disappeared too. Lucas's heart pounded. He could run. But where? They were blocking the door. He could fight. But he was just a kid. No, there was only one way to win this. Lucas grabbed the mouse and clicked something fast. Send to news network. The file uploaded instantly. One of the men lunged forward, but it was too late. The USB drive's contents were out in the world now. Lucas turned, staring straight at them. You lost. For the first time, fear flickered in the men's eyes. And then, the sound of sirens filled the street. They had been too slow. Truth was out, and nothing would stop it now. Lucas didn't sleep that night. By morning, the whole city knew. The news stations were filled with his mother's story, the files, the corruption she had exposed. The people responsible were being arrested. But most importantly, his mother was alive. They had taken her, hidden her away, But now, with the world watching, they couldn't keep her hidden anymore. Lucas sat outside the bookstore, Ember curled in his lap. Mr. Whitmore handed him a cup of tea. "You did it, kid." Lucas smiled for the first time in 2 years. But his journey wasn't over yet, because now he had one more mission. He was going to find his mother, and this time, nothing would stop him.